I think we should make a start. So we'll stop screen sharing and do the housekeeping.
Okay, so good evening and welcome to this Climate Hustings, hosted by Fenland and West Norfolk Friends of the Earth, King's Lynn Climate Concern and the Nature Volunteer Network. We're pleased you have joined us. To those in our audience unfamiliar to Zoom webinar, your cameras and microphones are turned off, but you can chat to each other and send messages to the organisers using the chat function. If you're on a PC, click on the chat speech bubble. You should see it at the bottom of your screen. If you're on an iPad, click the three little dots at the top right-hand corner of your screen to get a drop-down menu. In both cases, you can choose to message everyone at this hustings or one specific person. And please message Robert if you are experiencing technical difficulties. He's our tech support tonight. The hustings will start by each candidate saying what they will do about the climate crisis if elected. Our chair will then ask them some questions before putting as many questions submitted by you, the audience, as we have time for. If you would like to suggest a question, please click on the Q&A button, which on a PC should be next to the chat icon and has two speech bubbles rather than one. iPad users should click on the three little dots again to get the drop-down menu. In both cases, type your question. If you like, you can ask your question anonymously. Simply, again, look for the checkbox. There will then be time for a final statement from the candidates. We will be recording the session, but audience members will not be visible or audible in the recording. I would now like to welcome John Pennell from the National Association of Local Councils, who has kindly agreed to be our chairperson for the night. Thank you, John.
Good evening, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here tonight and to welcome you all to these hustings. I'm chair the Wellbeing Initiative within the Norfolk Association of Local Councils, which is all the town and parish councils in Norfolk. And we are affiliated to the National Association as well. Now, it's a particular poignancy about this evening because it's the day before, or 2 days before, the funeral of Prince Philip, who was a fantastic believer in the return of nature, wildlife, biodiversity, but could not, for political reasons, get involved in climate emergencies and climate change theories. But we know that he was a great believer in the return to where we should be with nature, not abusing it. And a good part of this evening will be about that. I won't dwell on that because we've had an awful lot about it, but suffice it to say he's been a great supporter of many causes quietly in the background. Now, this evening is your opportunity to put questions to people who will be representing us for the next 4 years. And County Council has enormous responsibilities, enormous powers for good. They also have the power to do some pretty damaging things, but hopefully we can persuade them not to do that. So we're lucky tonight to have 4 candidates who are standing. I don't wish to sort of preempt anything they're going to say, and we've chosen them, put them into an order that is totally random for them to put forward what they hope to do as we move forward. And so we're going to start by giving Josie Radcliffe the chair to start with. She's got 3 minutes, and I'm going to start a timer now. So Josie, over to you.
Thank you, John. Welcome, everyone. I'm Josie Radcliffe, and I'm standing to be the Liberal Democrat candidate for the Down and Market division to represent my hometown at the Norfolk County Council. I'm very excited to attend this event this evening and present the Liberal Democrats' manifesto ideas of what we'd like to achieve on the County Council. There's so much we could do. It has a massive budget and it could be a great force for good. Our ambition is to put the environment and climate change at the centre of everything the council does. So all the decisions are measured against the climate, environment and people's well-being when decisions are made. We know the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change confirms that we need to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. Now, this might still be possible with ambitious and immediate action. So we do need ambitious leadership from the County Council, or we risk losing many parts of Norfolk to rising sea levels. So it is a direct impact on us. When Extinction Rebellion visited the council chamber recently, a couple of years ago, some of the councillors there scoffed at them, but we took them seriously and we agree with their message. So if elected, we'll take the lead on making the whole of Norfolk carbon neutral by 2030, not just the county council itself by changing energy suppliers and using less plastic, but leading industries and agriculture and all the elements of society in Norfolk to be carbon neutral by 2030. One of the big ambitions is to insulate homes. It's one of the biggest causes of greenhouse gases or emissions in Norfolk. We will set up an organisation within the council with the goal of insulating all the rural homes, particularly those that are on oil-fired heating outside the main towns. We definitely want to do work on flooding as well. We need to do flood prevention work. So we're not just fighting against the effects of flooding because we're not doing enough, but we need to try and address the causes of climate change as well. Otherwise, we're spending money on flood prevention that we're not helping to reduce. We have lots of other policies, which I hope I can introduce to you this evening, but those are our 3 priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Josie. That was fantastic. And you actually only took 2.5 minutes to do that one. Moving forward, we're going straight to Terry, who is hails from Thetford, by the way, which is a good place to come from. So, Terry, over to you. I'll start the timer now.
Thank you, John, and good evening, everybody. I'm Terry Jeremy. I'm a county councillor in Thetford, candidate for Thetford West specifically. I was the lead on the Environment and Transport Committee at the County Council for about 4 years, up until about 2017, when that was actually scrapped by the council when the Conservatives regained control. But it was a role I very much enjoyed. Locally in Thetford, I'm the chairman of the Town Council's Amenities Committee, which oversees all of our open space management and conservation programmes in Thetford, which I'm very pleased to chair. I'm also very pleased to join you this evening, so thank you for the opportunity for organising this. I'm keen partly because of my own passion for the environment, but also because, like Josie, I'm keen to share my group's manifesto, and specifically the section in relation to sustainable Norfolk. It was the first one that we developed as a County Labour group when we invited people from all over Norfolk to converge on County Hall pre-COVID, so it gives you an idea of how long ago that was. But it was the first one that we pulled together, and we discussed what a Labour-led Norfolk County Council would do about the climate crisis. And the session was really useful and informed our policy, with more than 100 people attending and contributing. Now, we specifically chose this topic to go first because Labour councillors agree that there is a climate emergency, and because of that emergency, climate change and the environment must be embedded within all the other policies and aspects of the council's work. It cannot be tackled in isolation, and we cannot make that change that we need with gimmicks alone. 2 specific ways that I, if elected, and the County Labour Group would do to tackle the climate crisis include our commitment to ensuring that there is a climate and environmental risk assessment carried out on every policy decision taken by the County Council. It's absolutely crucial that we consider the impact on the environment and sustainability. That doesn't happen at the moment, and that is something that we would like to change. Labour is also committed to making the environment and climate change the responsibility of the leader of the council, to give it that overarching brief that it's needed. We have thematic cabinet positions at the moment, but so often the environment and climate change can be forgotten about. With the brief being under the leader of the council, it gives it that prominence and importance that it needs. This week, the County Labour Group has launched our Norfolk by Nature, a 10-point plan to protect and improve Norfolk's countryside, natural environment and wildlife. Norfolk County Council, we feel, has a huge opportunity to lead by example, and the environment is a crucial issue and we cannot delay. As I've mentioned, the full details of the manifesto are on our website. I'd encourage people to have a look. There's an awful lot of information on there, and a shameless plug, Chairman, it's www.norfolklabour.com, and if you want full details, they're available there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. You heard the ding-dong at the end. Interesting. Well, all interesting so far. And now we're going to Sandra. Sandra, can you pick up and carry on?
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this evening. For me, it's quite a strange experience, as I'm on a panel with people that I would consider friends and colleagues. So I can't disagree with any of their policies, really, because I support all of them. There is one thing I have to make clear, though, is that while I am the leader of the independent group, and there are 19 independent candidates standing in the county council elections, I can only speak for myself, as we are a group, not a party. We have no manifesto or party whip, and although we do tend to be like-minded by nature, if not rosette colour, as anyone who was unfortunate enough to see the Parkway planning application today will have seen. Now, I believe that it's time that people, and especially councils, realise that we are a part of nature and not separate from it. Just as the same way every council decision has to be weighed against how it affects vulnerable or disabled people, it should also be weighed against the environment and therefore our planet. Now, there are two things that I'm particularly passionate about. Trees, perhaps some obviously, as I was responsible for the idea behind the 1 Million Trees project, and the ocean, in particular plastic pollution. Now, everyone thinks that plastic pollution and climate change are separate issues, but they are not. 99% of plastic is made from fossil fuels. 8% of emissions come from plastic products, expected to rise so that plastic products take away 20% and are responsible for all those emissions. The biggest carbon sink on our planet is the world's oceans, and we are poisoning them. Plastic degrading in the ocean releases carbon, and the more plastic there is in the ocean, the more it degrades plankton's ability to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. We are surrounded by water in Norfolk. We need to look after it and take responsibility. Climate change isn't an abstract possibility. It's real, it's here, and it's now. There are glaciers in Alaska that I hiked over 20 years ago that are no longer there. It never ceases to amaze me that when council talks about climate change, it only talks in terms of reduction of carbon and trying to stop something that has already started. It's the equivalent of sticking your finger in a hole in your boat to stop it leaking. We need long-term thinking with more plans to help our communities to cope with the effects. We're still building on floodplains and wetlands and talking in terms of 100-year events. I want to see the council take the lead, building a better future with nature, less housing, but housing that can cope with flooding. Stop building in inappropriate places, stop putting business before nature, create more national parks, rewild them, stop using plastic completely, and make learning about the natural environment mandatory in schools. Re-educate people how to eat local in-season foods. Lobby the government for a reduction in business rates for truly green businesses, and certainly no investments by local government in companies that promote fossil fuels. The protection of ancient woodlands. There are so many things I could mention that I want to do,
Sandra,
but we'll be here all night, so it's probably best I don't do that.
Time is up, Sandra. Thank you. Last, but by no means least, Michael, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for allowing me, for inviting me tonight and allowing me to speak. I'm a Green Borough Councillor. I work on the independent group with both Sandra and Josie, and I also see them both as very valuable allies. And for me, cooperative politics is very much a part of the Green Way. I agree pretty much with every sentiment that has been said by the panelists this evening. So I'm going to give you an idea of the scale of the problem that we have with climate change. At the moment, we have somewhere, the global trend is around 415 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We should think about carbon budgets. So what the Tyndall Centre from the University of Manchester has done is divided the country into areas and given them a carbon budget that can be used between 2020 and 2100. For Norfolk, we have a carbon budget of 31.5 million tonnes of carbon dioxide. At current rates, this budget will be expended within 7 years. And we need to cut our CO2 emissions in excess of 13% each year. That's roughly what we've done during the pandemic. Not staying at home, not using our cars, not flying anywhere. We have achieved that in just 1 year with that scale of change of lifestyle. And that's if we want to do our fair share in keeping well below 2 degrees C and pursuing 1.5 degrees C global temperature target. We have to work together as a community, whether it's at parish council level, borough council level, county council level, or central government. We've got to pull our entire resources. And this is where cooperative politics comes in, where we empower communities, we involve communities, citizen assemblies. Everybody's got to be involved in this problem. It is that severe. So for me, it's the county has, or at least local government is directly responsible for about 2 to 5% of the local area's emissions and have powers over about 1/3 of the emissions. And it's every decision that we make, and I think this has to be reiterated, has to consider the climate and biodiversity. So that's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I did allow you a few extra seconds there because my timer didn't work quite properly. Well, what an amazing consensus amongst 4 people. Absolutely fantastic. And I've been asked to start off by asking some questions which were put prior to the meeting by various people. But it's also been pointed out to me that we haven't looked at the blueprint for accelerating climate action, which came out. And that is a worthwhile document to look at. Those of you who haven't seen it, ask us at the end, adept, and it is an amazing document. But the questions I've been asked to put forward first, a question from Carol. What environment issues does each candidate feel are the most important in West Norfolk, and what are they going to do about each of those problems? So can each of you, in turn, taking the same order as we had before, answer that question, please? What environmental issues feel are most important in West Norfolk? So, Josie, quickly.
Yes, thank you. Locally in West Norfolk, we have problems with flooding, and one of our biggest problems my colleagues and I have discovered is the biggest challenge to dealing with climate change in West Norfolk is the current borough council and the policies therein. So their determination to build on a wetland area, which we discovered today is quite shameful, really. So we will keep working on that.
Josie says flooding and building on wetlands.
Yeah.
Let's very quickly, Terry.
Yeah, I would follow on from that actually and say education. West Norfolk particularly can be significantly impacted by climate change. And I think it's quite shameful that the Borough Council there still refuses to declare a climate emergency. And I think therefore we've all got to do much more in terms of education to highlight what the risks are if we don't start to act.
Thank you, Terry. Moving to Sandra.
I absolutely agree with that. Flooding, desperately important issue, both rainfall and for rising sea levels. We are a low-lying area. We are flooded. We are marshes. We will suffer. Also, we have a lot of peatland. Farming practices don't necessarily reflect what could be done to reduce carbon levels. And I think also we have a lack of tree and hedge cover in the area as well.
Thank you very much, Sandra. I just want to correct you. We want to increase peat levels, really, rather than do that. Slight magic. Michael.
West Norfolk is coastal and low-lying. We have to consider that we are one of the most vulnerable parts of the world to climate change. We have to consider that not only do we, as an area, reduce our carbon emissions, but we have to prepare for the effects of climate change. And certainly, going back to the peatland, it provides both an opportunity to sequester, to store carbon, and also as areas that can mitigate flooding. We have fantastic opportunities here, and it will increase biodiversity, tourism. The other point is that as an area, we have difficulty with employment and jobs, and creating green jobs is an absolute priority. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. What is currently highlighted is actually Norfolk is one of the most vulnerable counties in the whole of England. It also is the most vulnerable to water shortage and water surplus. It is the outstanding county in the country. And I don't think many people in the districts and the boroughs actually realise this bit. Water Resources East, which has been tasked by central government to work out long-term development plans for water usage with the twin aims of making sure we have enough for people, enough for business, which includes farming, and enough for nature, and to find ways in which to store it. And they are working very hard with it. All of the principal authorities are members, signed up members to Water Resources East, as is Norfolk ALC. And we are working continuously together to try and produce a long-term plan, as is Lord Dammit. And one of the things that I was hoping candidates would bring out in question to this, but just partially come out, is the fact that we have to do much more on multi-tier working together. It came out a bit, but there's some more questions coming up on that later on. But that came out very clearly in these expositions tonight. Now I'm going to take the next question, but I'm going to reverse the order of answering. You've got to bear with me because I'm having to handle multiple screens on one tiny thing. A question from Cliff. If elected, what are the candidates' thoughts on creating a stronger emphasis on the climate and ecology crisis through engaging within climate and environment groups and the wider community within their divisions? Also, how will the candidates keep in mind climate and environmental considerations when participating in council business at meetings? So, Michael, you're on it first this time.
Thank you. I'm not sure I got the entirety of the question, but with regards to community. No, I'll have a shot, and if I'm anywhere wrong, you can point me in the right direction. It's about community engagement, and the best way to do that is through citizens' assemblies. They provide an opportunity for government or local government to talk to the people on the street, and for people on the street to understand and collaborate with the dilemmas that we have tackling climate change. What was the other part of the question, please?
How will they keep in mind climate environmental considerations when participating in council business at meetings?
I think that for me, it is going back to this concept of having better training of councillors on climate and biodiversity issues, and for officers, but to make sure that every decision is prioritised by the climate and biodiversity crisis, what impact it will have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sandra.
Thank you. Regarding meetings, I think that should come as standard for all topics, everything we discuss. Personally, I would quite like to see the extended provision for remote meetings. Why are we travelling over to County Hall so often when we really don't have to? We've proved it for the last year. It's not necessary, but we need to persuade government of that. Now, I'm probably a little out of step here with most people. I'm not entirely sure what the point of citizens' assemblies is, bearing in mind that councillors are elected, and a good councillor should be discussing with all local groups and be approachable and always talk to the public, so they always know the public opinion. So I know there's a lot that wouldn't agree with that, but a good councillor knows what their residents want, are always open. So that's as far as I'll go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Terry.
Yeah, thank you. Completely agree with Sandra about the need for regular engagement, and I think a good councillor does attend resident association meetings, parish council meetings. I certainly hold regular surgeries. One of the things we did recently in Thetford was to actually proactively meet with and engage with the local branch of Extinction Rebellion, and actually say, what can we do to work together to ensure that you understand how the council works, but we can also understand what your priorities are. And I think more of that happening across the county would be really useful. In terms of sort of community ownership, community involvement, one of the things which we've included within our manifesto is around sort of social enterprise and sort of community empowerment. My background is community development work. There's a section in our manifesto which basically encourages a community-led planning process, not a developer-led planning process. We're seeing so many assets in rural areas of Norfolk sold, and lots of examples of pubs closing and turning into housing developments. And we want to see more examples like you have at Stoke Ferry, where the community have rallied around to try and buy their pub to safeguard those assets. So we've included within our manifesto an opportunity for sort of seed funding and support a community team at County Hall to work with communities to do that. That could be, green space, it could be, a pub or a post office, but actually the principle is about empowering local communities, which we would like to see more of.
Thank you so much. And finally, but not last, Josie. Not least, sorry, Josie.
That's right. Yes, this is a topic we have developed in our manifesto. Fortunately, as well as recognising the value of citizens' assemblies, we'd like to take make a greater emphasis on the climate emergency to set up a climate change partnership, which would include representatives from citizens' assemblies, but also councillors, residents, young citizens, of course, climate scientists and experts, and businesses. And this would be to guide policy development and implementation. So this would be experts and keen citizens to guide what we're doing. So the county council can be the lead authority on this, but as you say, it does need to work with other agencies and to make sure that it's representing everybody and taking views from everybody. In terms of making decisions at the county council, in the way that decisions are currently assessed for equality impact assessments, we should also be doing a much stronger environmental impact assessment and biodiversity assessments, and they should be a mandatory part of all decisions and policies that are presented. And we would like to see that at the heart of all of the council's decision making, not as an add-on at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, coming out of this discussion was something really interesting. Citizens' assemblies. Now, most people won't be aware of this, and perhaps they ought to be, that the town and parish councils were set up in 1994, and they were called town and parish councils at that time. But if they were being set up today, they would rightly be called, as they are in Wales, community councils, because that's what they are. Really, they're community councils. Now, little known fact is that every parish also has an annual assembly of the parish meeting, which is actually a citizens' assembly. We need to build on that because it's a structure that's already there. And I'm very keen to see whether the candidates tonight would actually back that proposal, because it's there. We can build on it and we can use it. So can I take you in the same order again? Michael first. Do you think this is a good answer to your citizens' assembly?
I'm happy to back an expanded parish council annual assembly.
It's not a parish council thing. It's separate from the parish council.
I understand that. Yes, I understand that. It's usually 30 minutes before a parish council.
No. That's the way it has gone through, because we're ticking boxes here. It is actually a separate and really important function within each village, which has been allowed to die. And I think we can build on it to give what I believe you're right to say. We need these citizens' assemblies. But we have one there, and if we can build on it, we can go forward. So it isn't quite as described. It is there as part of statute, and we can build on it. It's the way it's implemented.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Yes, I'm happy. I'm happy to support that. Thanks,
Michael. I thought you would. Because a lot of these things have fallen into disrepute, and I'll come to some more of those in the next questions. Sandra.
I actually really like that idea. I have 8 parishes in my division, and some have their annual parish meeting on the same night as a parish council meeting, and some have it on a separate night. It would be nice if the public turned up, actually. Very, very rare. So I think that would be a really good way of bringing the public in and promoting that more to engage people. I really like that.
Thank you, Sandra. We're on to Terry.
Yeah, I think citizens' assemblies and town and parish councils very much sort of come from the same principle, which is local communities understand their local area best. And I think it's a shame that so many parish councils have struggled to function over the last few years with fewer and fewer candidates standing. I'm very passionate about town council. It's where I was first elected, and anything that we can do, certainly as county councillors, to support our network of town and parish councils across Norfolk would be a good thing, and I would definitely support that.
Thank you. Josie.
Yes, thank you. Next Tuesday evening is Downham Market's town meeting. So I guess that's what you're referring to here. I hope.
I am indeed, Josie.
Yeah, and
It's called the Annual Assembly of the Parish Meeting, the technical description.
Right, yes, known as the town meeting locally. And they do, the town council convenes it, manages it, and they do take it seriously. And not quite sure what happened last year. It might have had to be cancelled if it was around this time, before we'd all got used to Zoom. But yeah, but it's online next week. We do get some of the more engaged citizens coming along, but it would be great to expand the scope of it and make people feel that it was their forum, you know, for raising all the, you know, all the things they're passionate about and what they'd like to see change on. So yes, I would definitely support much more involvement of the community in these events.
Right, moving on, I've got some more questions. Now, we've talked about net zero. Now, net zero, as defined by the the CCC Climate Change Commission, is rather different to what actually is reality. They leave out food, they leave for political reasons, they leave out air travel, they leave out many things. But most importantly, they leave out the carbon footprint of the goods that we import from overseas. And we in the developed world can mightily say, oh, we've reduced our carbon footprint by 45% in the past X years. But actually we've done that by exporting our carbon dioxide producing industries to the third world, and now we blame them. And I believe that any calculation of net zero must bring those into account, the imports that we bring in. So what do you all feel about that? And I'm going to go around again, but the other way around this time to answer that question. Do you believe that we should actually change our definition of net zero to cover all features of our lifestyle, not just the bits that we choose to do? Josie.
Thank you. Yes, yes, I certainly do believe that we should be taking account of all aspects of our first world Western lifestyle, which we know is the biggest contributor. You know, we're the worst culprits in climate change, and just outsourcing our emissions to other countries is shocking, particularly when those countries are likely to be those that are going to be most affected as the climate changes. So it is a very poor reaction to the actions we need to take. We as a group, we have an ambition to build up green businesses and green jobs in Norfolk. So then we could be looking at the smart manufacturing techniques to make things here instead of having things made abroad and then shipped at great cost as well to the environment. So we need to be using less of the world's resources in many ways. And within Norfolk, we've got the opportunity to be more self-sufficient in that way with the right leadership.
Thank you. Terry.
Thank you. Yes, as you were talking then, John, I remember that phrase, what was it, damned lies and statistics, because
absolutely,
you know, unless we're absolutely really clear and also really honest about what we're including and what we're not including, you can, you know, patch something up any which way you want. And I think it's so important, this sort of environment issue, that, you know, we have to be clear and we have to be honest as politicians, one about the scale of the problem, but also about what needs to be done to address it. I'll give you a very real example of that at the moment. Lots of councils are very keen at the moment, including Norfolk County Council, to promote how many new trees they're planting. What they don't tell you about is how many trees they're currently cutting down. And, you know, we've lots of examples around the county of significant tree reduction, whether it be through housing or through road building or just through routine maintenance, where it's far easier to do away with the whole thing rather than sort of sensitively look after it. So I think it's really important that councils and councillors in particular are clear and honest with the information that we share.
Okay, thank you. Sandra, I'll change my background in a minute. Sandra.
Okay, I do agree with Terry on that. As a tree planter, I find it nothing but frustrating when people are cutting them down faster than I can plant them. I do wholeheartedly agree with that. I've always found that the whole declaring carbon neutrality to be a bit of a misnomer, because how could you be totally carbon neutral if you take into account absolutely everything we do that creates carbon? It's not possible. So we need to be honest with ourselves. And if you're not counting everything, you're not telling the truth, essentially. So I think we do need to count everything and then see where we are.
Thank you. I've changed my background so you can see a wood that I planted 15 years ago.
It's a lovely wood.
Michael.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, net zero, it hides all manner of sins. It's a little bit like paying the pardoner. Wealthy countries can pay for carbon sequestration and say, oh, look how good we are. We can outsource, as you say, our carbon emissions to third world countries and say, look, they're not doing as well as we are. It's outrageous. I'm going to bring this back to County Council, because one of the things that we do in Norfolk is that we send our waste to be burnt in incinerators. Now, organically sourced carbon dioxide is one of these things that don't get added up in our carbon emissions. So Norfolk isn't very good at collecting its food waste, which it could deal with at roughly half the cost financially of incineration, and put it into anaerobic digestion, which produces power, it produces fertilizer, and it sequesters that as carbon. So it keeps much of the carbon locked up. But we prefer to send it to waste incinerators that burn it, produce carbon dioxide at twice the financial cost. There is no sense in this whatsoever. Something needs to change.
Yeah, right. The questions came up there which are really interesting. Now, as a rule, I get lots and lots of letters every day about, or emails, because nobody writes through the post anymore. And I had one this morning, which came from a town council, which said, John, I'm very keen that my council should declare a climate emergency. To which I responded, you raised a very good question. My view on declaring a climate emergency is it largely depends on why it is being declared. The first case is that it is just a tick box exercise, i.e. when the organisation declares it and then does absolutely nothing about it, which I am sad to say is the most common. The second case, when it is the first step along a long, arduous journey to do something about it. Now, do the candidates share that view that largely these climate emergency declarations are in fact just a tick box exercise to say we've done that? We'll come back with Michael first.
Thank you, Chair. I attempted to get Borough Council Kings Lynn and West Norfolk to declare climate emergency. I put that motion forward. Sadly, it was defeated. The point of a declaration of a climate emergency, it would put the council in a better position to be in line for such funding, public and private opportunities, as and when they arise. Councils who have not declared but are clearly at risk from climate change driven processes will lack credibility with potential funders. Council will score better in bids for funding if the council has demonstrated that it is aware of the impending problems of climate change and is open to taking the necessary actions to prevent and or ameliorate such issues, and give funders confidence in the proper, targeted and accountable use of their funding if they grant it. We're using our vulnerabilities to our advantage to secure funding that will be needed for the necessary actions that must be taken. We're showing people, businesses and organisations across Norfolk that there is a problem, that the council recognises it and is taking action to address it. This would reassure the concerned, alert the uninformed and galvanise the willing into supportive action.
Thank you, Michael. So we're going to move to Sandra.
Thank you. I do have to agree, unfortunately. I've never been one for grand declarations or pledges. I believe that it's actions that we should really be judged on. As someone told me recently, you are a leader because of your behaviour, not your title. And so it really is action that is what we should be judged on, and what should happen. Whether you declare or pledge anything is really neither here nor there, but you have to do things. And there's so many that will make a declaration and then think job's done, that's fine, and it's not.
Thank you. Terry.
I think for me, the declaration of a climate emergency is the kind of first stage in recognition of the fact that there's a problem. And I think those councils that do declare it actually are saying, actually, we're not really sure what the problem is in total, we're not really sure what the solution is, but we do recognise that something is happening and something's got to be done. And therefore, I'm very proud that Brecon District Council, where I'm a district councillor, we did declare a climate emergency. But what's come from that is the production of a sustainability strategy. And that for me is the really important part. What are we going to do as a council to address the climate emergency, having now declared one? Lots of organisations adopt policies and procedures, I'm quite sure, and they sit on a shelf somewhere. How you enact them is really important. And as I say, the strategy that's come from that is important, and I would like Norfolk County Council to declare a climate emergency and to produce its own sustainability strategy.
Josie.
Thank you. First of all, I can tell Terry that those of us in West Norfolk are listening enviously to your achievement of declaring a climate emergency in Brecon and then following it up with more concrete plans. I think a lot of this, the problem of tick box exercises is down to leadership, and for us it stems from the UK government, the current Conservative government, which is trying to do as little as possible, make commitments, water it down. We've got the climate COP26, is it, coming up this year, but we have no credibility whatsoever in climate actions. So of course we're trying to push a Conservative controlled council to declare an emergency, but there's no pressure on them to do so, because there's no national lead on it. So it is very frustrating, but yes, that is what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I would like, I've got loads of questions I'd like to put to the candidates, loads of them, but I'm not going to take up the whole meeting because you get sick of my voice. I'm going to ask one question. One more question, and then I'm going to have a break whilst everybody stands up, stretches their legs, and then comes back and asks their own questions. We haven't got that many in the Q&A yet, but I shall have a look at those during the break. So the final question that I'm going to put in this session, and I've got loads more I'd love to put, is this one. Every year, the County Council has a budget consultation, and the budget consultation is about money, funnily enough. We participated in this, and we organised some webinars for our member councils where they could come and question that. And at each one of these, the following question was asked: why, when you say you are doing a budget consultation, is there no carbon budget here for us to consult on? Would you support such a move in County Council, that there must be not only be a monetary budget consultation, but a carbon budget consultation? We'll start with you, Michael.
Thank you. You've already heard me bang on about carbon budgets. Yes, yeah. It is. Forgive the expression. It's a no-brainer. We have to. Absolutely.
Right, Sandra.
Agreed. Councils have always been focused on budget and money above people, environment, and everything else. And it's not all about money, and it's time that we do need to start looking at other things. So yes.
Okay. Terry.
Well, thank you, John, for taking part in the consultation last time around. I think it's a sorry state of affairs when about 500 people last time took part in the County Council's budget consultation in a county the size of Norfolk. I would firstly like to see the primary budget consultation promoted and engaged with to a much greater extent, but I would also support the introduction of a carbon budget in addition to that.
Josie.
Thank you. Yes, this is, definitely something that we should be supporting, and it would be interesting to, in running that process, we would be able to demonstrate how it ties into the work of the County Council, how carbon generation and reduction needs to be embedded in everything the County Council does. So tying it in with the financial consultations. I mean, there's other budgeting we could do, well-being measurements as well. So, but then the council could be leading and showing how these impact on people's lives and impact on the work of the council. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just for information, Norfolk ALC tries to organise one webinar a week. Typically at these webinars, we have around about 100 attendees, which is quite fantastic. And they vary from things about flooding, the lieutenancy, but most importantly, we work with the departments within County Hall, which are cracking departments right down at the bottom level, well staffed by caring professionals. And the waste management team in particular is working very closely with us on our campaign this year, which isn't quite reaching what you asked for, Michael, with a 13% cut this year. We were aiming to get everybody to cut 10%. And we tagged it cut a ton in 21 because the average output of a human in Norfolk is just over 9 tons per person per year. And they have been incredibly helpful, and we are partnering with them. The director of the waste management is a fantastic guy. And we work with several other branches within County Council to do it. They're terrific, absolutely superb. But at the top level, it doesn't get up there. So I commend that, and we will be doing much more as we can. Now, at this point in the time, our audience, whom we can't see, sadly, in this setup on Zoom, because we love to see how you are reacting to what we're saying, have put some questions in, but we've been going for 3/4 of an hour, sitting still, listening mostly to my terrible voice, and only lightened up occasionally by the very intimate thoughts of our contributors tonight. But I'm going to ask you all to stand up, walk around your chair, get the coffee cup filled or what have you, and be back in 1 minute, by which time we will have organised ourselves to ask the questions which are in the Q&A answers. Okay, so we've got a 1 minute break. So I can have a look at the Q&A now. Good, we're coming back again now into the meeting. We're going to start in about 25 or less seconds. Brenda, are you happy if I just take the few questions out of the chat?
Yes, absolutely. There are lots of good questions.
There are, aren't there? There are,
yes.
We might add a few along the way.
Maybe I could take this opportunity. A couple of people have asked me why there's no Conservative candidate here tonight. Of course, I want to reassure everyone they were asked, but unfortunately, none of their local candidates were available tonight.
I think that's answered that question. By the way, just for clarity, I'm a fully paid up member of the Monster Raving Loony Party, so I'm representing them tonight. We are an apolitical organisation, Norfolk ALC, and we don't do politics at all, just not interested in it. We are interested in the people. Right. Now, I may also like to answer one or two of these questions myself along the way, because I think one or two of them are quite interesting. Now, I'm going to start with what we started with tonight, really, with Trudy Clark, who asks, in view of today's decision to pass the proposed parkway development, what would you do to protect such areas and green spaces in general? So we're going to start very quickly. I'm going to start with Josie, because it's your patch. Finger trouble. I always have that as well.
Got it, yes. I've got the chat come up over the mute.
I know the feeling.
Yes, thank you. The county council has huge land holdings already for the county farms estate. We've got the potential to buy more land in the Live Dem manifesto that we made a commitment to purchase land for tree bit planting. We could also be purchasing land of the different types of habitats which we need to protect. So it could be that we'd have an ambition to purchase areas of land such as the Parkway development, which we perhaps ought to explain to Terry, who may not be familiar with it, in Kings Lynn, and to protect those areas for the benefit, so then the residents have got these wild areas close to their homes that they can benefit from. Thank you.
Terry.
Thank you. Just on the planning issue, I think we could all share frustrations with the current planning system. Certainly where I am in Brecon, we have our fair share, as I know you guys do in Kingston and West Norfolk Borough Council. I've always felt that, the planning system is so developer focused currently. We must have a community-led planning process. So one of our proposals in the Labour manifesto is to create a neighbourhood planning team within the County Council. I'm a big planner, as I'm sure you are, John, of neighbourhood plans. County Council needs to support communities with these and also help advise on sort of sustainable developments and support. Just on county farms, the county farms is 16,000 acres across Norfolk. A significant number of that is within West Norfolk. And I completely agree with Josie that there's huge opportunities for developing some of that in terms of rewilding opportunities, maybe turning over less productive land to sustainable energy production. Much more creative thinking is needed across the County Council in terms of managing its assets, and also thinking about actually can we use some of those assets to support the environment rather than working against it. That's one of our sections within Sustainable Norfolk covers county farms.
Thank you. Sandra?
Thank you. This is a little bit sore for me today as I was on the committee. I voted against it. I am deeply frustrated and disappointed that that decision went the way it was. How would I have protected it and going forwards? This, for me, as an independent, comes down to listening to people. The local people were very, very against this application. And time again, we find that the people are being trampled on and ignored, and that is not acceptable. We need to protect our green spaces. If COVID has taught us anything, it's that being out in nature and in green spaces is incredibly valuable for our mental health and well-being and our general physical health. So I would, as a consultee, Norfolk County Council never mentioned any of this, and it should be mentioned. The health and well-being should be on the planning agenda and mentioned of how that will affect local people and the environment. And currently it's just ignored. It's all down. It's almost as if the system is stacked in favour of the developer. I also don't believe that the council should be determining its own planning applications. We would judge, jury and executioner on that planning application, and that just shouldn't happen. Going forward, yes,
I know you're passionate on this issue, but we have got a lot of questions to get through. Michael.
Thank you, Chair. I had the same issue at county with the waste incinerator, that they were judge, jury and executioner. Fortunately, we were able to persuade the Secretary of State to call it in. That's the planning system is an extraordinary system that is geared against the individual, geared against communities. and very much in favour of the developers. And the government is about to change it to make it even easier for the developers. It is extraordinary. I agree with the neighbourhood plans. It's part of the toolkit. I'm doing a neighbourhood plan with one of my communities, and it is so hard. It's an extraordinarily complex process, and help to deal with those, absolutely. The problem is that certainly with today's decision, it went against a lot of what is already written in the local plan, and planning committees have to better understand and respect the local plan. That there are issues against generating local plans because government is putting pressure through funding, through viability tests, and the housing delivery test. Every council is given a number of houses that it's got to build, at least district council. And this is ruining the country because decisions are not being made objectively.
Thank you, Michael. I'm going to stop you there because we've got a lot of questions to answer. I will say that I do hope people in the locality will take this up with the Environment Agency and authorities other than the planning things, because that is their function in life, to make sure that the environment is looked after. Now, this is a question that very keenly I await the answer for. This is from Jenny Walker. And the question is this: governments have successfully shifted the responsibility to individuals. Do you agree? And what can be done to redress that? Now, this is actually quite a subtle question. So I'm going to start with you this time, Michael, coming down in reverse order.
Thank you. Can I confirm this is about climate change and biodiversity?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. It's everybody's responsibility, and to shift it onto individuals is thoroughly irresponsible. Governments are every bit a part of it, and they have far more clout than individuals do. But it's the scale of the problem is that everybody has to be involved, but governments are shirking their responsibility, whether it's at local government or national government.
Okay, Michael, thank you. Sandra.
Governments are very good at that, aren't they? Shifting blame onto everyone. Governments also forget that they are also full of people, and it is everyone's responsibility. But government should lead, and that's their role in society, is to lead. And if they can't do it, then no one will.
Thank you, Sandra. Terry.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was earlier, but mentioned leadership by example, and I'm a big supporter of that. We all need to practice that as councillors, as I'm sure we do, and the council as a whole needs to as well. I think I'd probably say the best example I can give where that has made a difference, a very noticeable difference, is plastic carrier bags. Used to be, thousands and thousands of carrier bags in this country, millions I should think, but the government showed some leadership on that regard, so it's a good example. Thank you,
Terry. Josie.
Yes, thank you. Yes, well, I agree. Well, as individuals, we can make changes to our own lifestyle, but the government has got to take the lead on this and make large-scale changes. We're not going to be able to have any impact or any improvement on the climate without them taking the lead. So telling us as individuals not to take long-haul flights for holidays while they're trying to push through additional runways and making air travel within the UK more attractive than rail travel is just crazy. We're just fighting against the system. So yeah, the government definitely needs to take the lead on this and do the big scale work that needs doing to enable individuals to have that impact.
Thank you. Fundamentally, I don't believe that governments are the right people to do this. They tend to hurl money at a problem, which is channeled down and largely wasted on projects. We've only got to look at the feed-in tariff to see that as something that went, aggressively wrong. And I do believe, personally, this is a whole fundamental of our very being as Norfolk ALC, that it's the people that do things, and they need the help coming down to them from central government to enable them to do it. And quite right to say the policies put about, oh, let's save the air sector. Who cares, frankly? We need to stop this air travel. And so to subsidize it and is wrong. But I firmly believe that the only way we will get out of this crisis is every man, woman and child on this planet has eventually to take their part in cutting carbon emissions, because although we can blame it on the bank or the buildings or the manufacturing, it's the people that buy those goods and act on it that actually take the final decisions. And so it has to be people driven. That's my soapbox for tonight. Victoria has a question, and I'm trying to get these sorted a bit because it's juggling in front of my eyes. How do we get the public to really understand the severity of our situation? Clearly many do not, as we would not have our present government if they did. That's from Victoria. We'll start with Michael again.
Thank you, Victoria. It's a good question. It is about publicity. It's about education. It's about public engagement. I've had discussions with academics on how we perceive threat, and for some reason we do not accept a distant threat as being imminent. So because the impacts of climate change are some way down the track, even though our actions now have ramifications, don't click very easily with people. But we managed to persuade the whole world about the emergency with the pandemic and the need to change our behaviour, and it worked very successfully. So where there's a will, there's a way. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Sandra, very quickly, we've got loads of questions and we really want to finish, I think, probably in 15 minutes' time.
I have to agree with Michael, really, that people don't generally worry about things until it's likely to happen to them. And regarding the pandemic, it wasn't until people locally got sick that people realised how serious it was. Sadly, I hope that climate change doesn't get to that point. We need more education, but there will always those who won't be persuaded.
Thank you. Terry.
Yeah, education is key, but I also think making it relatable and also achievable, what we as individuals can achieve and how it relates to us as individuals in our own communities is absolutely crucial.
Good. Last, by no means least, Josie.
Thank you. Yes, I think engagement and participation with the public is key here. So we can learn from each other, get stories from the public of impacts that they're experiencing, and those are the stories we can share with the wider community of impacts that people are seeing now or that will affect us locally. Yeah, it does need to come down to a local impact in many ways to convert those who are not already aware of the global scale of this.
Good. Right, now there's one specifically directed to Michael here. If I can find it again. It's about ADEPT and councils signing up to it. And specifically talks about, this is from Jennifer Tabecki. My question is about funding, and it's in two parts. I ask this against the background of this government having cut funding to local councils. Now, of course, local councils means two things in two different contexts. I think you mean principal councils, i.e. the second and third tiers of local government, rather than local councils, which are considered parish and town councils, because we don't get any funding at all from central government, which is a bit sad. And it goes on, did you have any success recently in persuading your council to be signatories to the ADEPT blueprint for local government? Michael, you first, and then whether we think the ADEPT really is any value with the way it's written. Michael.
Thank you. I have to confess I haven't attempted. It's I'm in despair at the current administration and the ability to persuade them to do pretty much anything. It has been an extraordinary challenge for me, and I'm sorry I haven't tried, but I'm more than happy to give it a go.
Thank you. Sandra, you can duck it if you want to.
Sorry, I didn't actually hear the question. My connection was a bit odd.
Okay, we'll skip it. It was directed. Terry.
Yeah, I don't understand the question, so I'm happy to skip it.
Okay, Josie.
John, in your introduction, you mentioned a blueprint. Is this the one you're referring to?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I think I'd definitely like to learn more about this. I think this is a learning opportunity for us, as they say here.
Okay, I think it's a really interesting question. I'm not convinced, that actually it has got much teeth, this document, but that's my own. Right, moving on, because this is really important. From the Norwich Food Hub. Current council has a climate change policy, but there appears to be very little listed by way of actual action. What would each candidate do to help the council meet the objectives listed in the plan? Specifically, what will they do to develop plans and sort projects with our partners and local communities to progressively address the causes and the impacts of climate change according to our local priorities, securing benefit for our communities? That's the question from the Norwich Food Hub. And I'm going to start with you, Josie, this time.
Thank you. There's a definite need to work with partner organisations to achieve any significant benefits or changes. We've already talked about having a climate change partnership and involving organisations, citizens and experts. I think that's all I can say about that. Yeah, it's
okay. Thanks, Josie.
Making sure that happens.
Terry?
I think for me, the most significant action that could be taken after the elections by whoever's in the administration is to stop the proposals for the Norwich Western Link. These would be absolutely devastating to the environment in Norfolk, the additional carbon that would be produced from the Norwich Western Link road and the other environmental impact, let alone the cost. The cost alone would be absolutely significant. Think of the investment that we can have in public transport in Norfolk if we were to scrap the something like £50 million if you include the interest payments to Norfolk County Council alone, let alone whatever the government's putting in with it. Scrap the Norwich Western Link would be top of my list.
Thank you, Terry. Sandra?
I'm sorry, I have to agree wholeheartedly with Terry. It's a diabolical plan, really, that I put a motion to council to plant 1 million trees, and that's all fine and dandy. But if we're cutting them down faster than we're planting them, there's no point. We have to protect our ancient woodlands and our environment first, and spending money on a road that will produce more carbon emissions, devastate a woodland and a bat colony. No, not for me, thank you.
Thank you. Michael?
Well, I'm working at the Borough Council to try and get an effective strategy and action plan in place. I'll just go back and agree with the vanity project that is the Western Link. Why are we building roads in this day and age? It's especially with that environmental cost. It's extraordinary. The money could be used so much more objectively, but this is where our citizens' assemblies come in to help develop the plans and support projects. And I'd like to talk about the Our House Convention, which is meant to give meaningful consultation for environmental plans. And I asked the Borough Council whether or not they would consult on their strategy and action plan. And they had said that the cabinet member and the officers said that they had no plans to do so. How can we create? Yeah.
Thank you so much. None of you have answered the part of the question, which is and enable local communities to progressively address the causes with working with partners. Now, I won't say this comes from Norwich Food Hub, which of course is not part of our local council network. We are trying desperately to work with all partners to get a coherent policy to work together. We talk to all the districts, all the organisations involved as far and as fast as we can, and I hope to partner with them to do this. So we're trying to do that in the rural areas, but within Norwich itself. And anybody's welcome to contact me. I'm well-being at norfolkalc.gov.uk, and that will be distributed by the organisers of this. If anybody wants to contact me about this, very happy to talk about it. One from Alistair Kent. Policy consensus that we need to move away from cars and driving as a primary means of transport, and walking and cycling and public transport. But the actions of NCC seem to be to prioritise the car over everything else. Now, I think we've actually answered that question. So I'm going to move on, because every candidate has agreed that is not a good idea, and we need to move away from the car. We should have this one again, which is from Alistair Kent. Much attention is focused on what the individual can do, but the biggest impact can be brought about through addressing companies and institutions, how to reduce their impact. I think we've dealt with that one, so I won't ask that one. Now, this one, of course, is a really biggie, and is important, particularly in rural communities like Norfolk. Which is, please, could you each say something about public transport throughout our area and the private car and bicycle use, and by implication, what you are doing or what you hope to do and to see to improve the use of alternate means of transport. Michael, I let you off lightly last time. I'll start with you on this one.
Thank you. Excellent question. The bus network is in a atrocious state in Norfolk. Considerably more funding has to go into it. We need to think more about modal hubs where buses can interchange with rail and other forms of transport. We need to be able to think about multi-mode transport as well. Someone might want to cycle to a bus stop, catch a bus, fold their bike into the bus, go to the rail station, take their bike on the train with them, say to Cambridge, and then use the bicycle to cycle around Cambridge. I know that Norfolk County Council has a Greenways project. It's very limited at this moment. We need to expand cycle networks, active travel dramatically, and the availability of that, people will use it. It's about making public transport easy and available, that people want to use. It's not about forcing people out of their cars. It's about persuading them to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you. My division is very rural. We don't have very many buses, and they don't always go where you want to go when you want to go. So you're very limited on what you can do. I would like to see more investment in community dial-a-ride buses where people can choose the route where they really want to go. But I absolutely agree with Michael. We need more cycle lanes. I wanted to see more off-road cycle routes that were safe and car-free. I wouldn't let my children go out cycling on the road in West Norfolk. They'd probably get killed. But there is one thing that often gets ignored, particularly in West Norfolk, is we don't just have roads, we have waterways, and we don't use them effectively. We could run water buses between Downham Market and Kings Lynn very easily, but we don't, and no one's interested, and I'd love to know why that is.
Thank you, Sandra. Terry.
Thank you. One of the commitments in the Labour manifesto, which I'm really pleased about, is a commitment to spend at least £1 for every £1 we spend on road projects, we spend £1 on sustainable transport. I'm not sure what the equation is, I can't quite remember it, but we spend very little currently as a county council on sustainable transport. It's very road heavy, and therefore we miss out on opportunities for national funding on sort of walking and cycling projects because we don't have shovel-ready schemes to bid for. You know, when the opportunities come from central government to apply for that funding, we just don't take advantage of them because we're not geared up enough. So that needs to change. The other thing which I'm really pleased about is we included in our manifesto a commitment to extend subsidised bus travel for young people to use at the evenings and weekends. It's absolutely crucial that we encourage young people from an early age to use sustainable transport and encourage that demand as they sort of, get older, and encourage people to use what opportunities there are, limited as they might be in many areas. But where sustainable transport options are available, we need to be taking full advantage of them.
Thank you. Josie.
Thank you. Yes, all of the above, of course. We have an additional commitment in the Lib Dem manifesto regarding transport hubs. So far, improvements have been made to the traffic within Norwich by having park and ride sites around Norwich, but everyone still has to drive to Norwich first to be able to use them. Our ambition is to have hubs in the districts around Norfolk so that people only have to drive or cycle or get a bus to their local transport hub. And then there's a rapid, clean, smart public transport option to get between the major towns. So whether it's rail or bus or coach, but something that people want to use. And then, so then the journeys at the beginning and end are just the beginning of the journey, what might be made by car. In terms of devolving some of this down, we also commit to supporting the parish councils at their level to introduce more cycling and walking options with funding. I know, as we mentioned with Downham Market, we could have a cycle and footpath all along the river between Downham and Kings Lynn. But there's no leadership to get that going at the moment. So obviously the parish councils know what will be best in their areas, where their local residents need to move around between, and what the safe options would be.
Thank you. These are all topics that do need addressing, and the candidates in the room, welcome to talk to us. We have some plans. Norfolk ALC might meet these objectives. We developed them slightly before the COVID pandemic struck, and we were quite well advanced. And some of them are getting some support from within County Hall, particularly from the waste management team. And we need to progress these collectively and community-based, and all the suggestions. We have a plan. Victoria has asked a question. Somebody did touch on the question of food and farming, but how would you get across the message that we need to change what we grow and that people can take the easiest action by changing their own diet? Where should we start? Josie, I think we'll start with you.
Thank you. Leading by example would seem to be a good one here. And within the county hall, there is a small cafeteria, a refreshments shop. But we should make sure that it's serving options which have a lower environmental impact. So alternatives to meat, of course, or certainly alternatives to red meat. And then work with local businesses where they've got significant staff in cafeterias and schools to embed better ideas for, more progressive ideas for diet, and just start a conversation initially and lead by example, and try to introduce it in the bigger organisations where it'll make an impact.
Thank you. We're going to move to Terry.
Yeah, just 2 points on that one. I think Sandra may want to talk more about the work she did at County Hall to reduce single-use products. and the sort of, a really good example of following on from what Josie was just saying there about leading by example. I'm a big supporter of the work that Norwich Food Hub undertakes. I'm involved in a community fridge network here in Thetford. Food waste is a major issue in our county. We spoke earlier about the need to collect food waste. I think there needs to be a huge focus on ensuring we don't have food waste in the first place. There's a part about education. I have a regular row with people about the difference between best before and used by dates. You'd be surprised what I managed to eat out of my fridge. But we've got to educate people about cooking methods, about storage methods, and stop wasting so much food because of the impact on the environment and the carbon generation involved in producing it in the first place. And then we can have a conversation about dealing with the genuine food waste that comes after that. But food waste generally is a big issue for me.
Thank you. I'll pick up on that in a minute. Sandra, where have I got to? Where should I be now? Who's next? Sandra.
Yeah, definitely. I keep finding myself saying, I agree with Terry. Maybe I should get a banner saying that. Absolutely, food waste is a big issue. Also, we need to be promoting local producers. We have some incredible farming, local producers going on in Norfolk, and they're not promoted enough. We don't need to buy so much imported food. When we've got local producers on our doorstep, we need to look for those. But a really good way is to get into schools, because they feed children, and what you can get the kids on board with, they will take home to their parents. So education in schools, getting them cooking, using local produce, local in-season produce would be brilliant.
Michael.
Thank you. I'm going to look at this at two angles. David Attenborough, as our national treasurer, has talked about reducing meat consumption, but there is a love of cooking programs and recipes, and Norfolk is notoriously bad at vegan, vegetarian food. And to me, if you start getting people interested in recipes and include the message alongside vegetarian recipes, that is a really good way to start communicating the message. But we also have to start thinking about our farming community as well, because it's about what we're growing. We're going to have to think about different crops. We're going to have to think about water tolerant crops. We're going to have to think about crops that are dealing with risk of disease and pests. It's a huge thing. So it's getting the farming community involved as well in the process, and of course getting them to promote local food rather than flying in your strawberries from goodness knows where out of season.
Absolutely right. Now, it is often said that up to 15% of every individual's carbon footprint comes from food waste. That is a staggering figure. I will say that there is a fantastic food partnership between Norfolk and Suffolk counties. It runs under the brand Food Savvy. And do look at it, because it is a phenomenal piece of work done by County Council. It's buried, it's difficult to get at. We try to publicise it as much as possible. But it is really important that we get this to understand that. I am an unashamed carnivore, but even I have cut my consumption of meat down. We must be aware that beef produced in Norfolk, off the marshes in the south, and marshes to the north as well, does not have the carbon footprint that is commonly attributed to meat, which is grown in the States and in South America. So be aware that there are figures that differ slightly. But even I have shut down my meat consumption, and cutting it by 10%. Portion control, which would tackle obesity as well, is a really important part of where we need to get to. It's a really important issue, this one. Food waste is one we are going to be tackling as a theme from Norfolk ALC this year, with help, I'm glad to say, massive help from the County Council. And one plea to all of you, if you get elected, is goodness sake, uncover those professionals, surface them, and make sure that the rest of the council gets to meet them. Now, I've got one final question, and I think we must, because it's getting late, and my vegetarian supper tonight is going to be spoilt if I don't go and eat it before about 9:30. But there's one final question to put to the candidates, and this comes from Johnny Walker. And it's a really important one. I want you to think carefully before you answer it, because this may be reality he's talking about. What would your message be about a temperature increase of 2 degrees or more, which we seem to be headed for? That's the bit I added to his question. What is your message? Now, I'm going to be different this time, and I'm going to take Terry first, followed by Sandra, and then if I get it right, I'll get everybody else in. So, Terry, your question. What's your message about a temperature increase?
I think it would be a disaster, and we absolutely must act. Talk is cheap, as they say, and us as candidates, and certainly as councillors, we must act on the climate emergency to avert a temperature increase.
Sandra?
Can I wave my I agree with Terry banner again? It would be absolutely disastrous worldwide, that it would cause so many issues, that people complain about refugees now, that there's going to be a whole lot more if that gets worse. We desperately need sorting, and it's everyone's responsibility.
Josie?
Yes, I agree. Certainly on a global scale, wars are currently fought over oil, and soon wars are going to be getting fought over fresh water supplies, and it's going to impact everyone. Locally, some of parts of Norfolk would disappear under sea level rise if temperatures rose that much. So there needs to be a very clear message about the impact on our lives and on a global scale.
Thank you. Michael?
I'll go back to Terry's disaster and expand. Once you get past 2 degrees C, you're talking about risking hitting tipping points. In fact, we don't know if we'll hit tipping points before 2 degrees C, and then it will accelerate out of control. We don't know where we will stop. 3 degrees, 4 degrees, 5 degrees warming. We are risking pushing the climate over the edge to be able to support human life and everything else with which we share the planet. 2 degrees alone will see pretty much the destruction of the Amazon rainforests. It will see the destruction of most of the world's coral reefs, which are the sea equivalent of the rainforests. We will see destruction of the polar ecosystems. We will see climate refugees. It is not a desirable situation to be in. That's why we have to stop it. That's why we have to act now.
Thank you so much. I will say that you're glad you mentioned tipping points. The most serious one that I'm aware of, the most serious and most likely tipping point, is the oceans running out of oxygen. And if you read the research, which is much buried and hidden, you'll see that this can happen almost overnight. And we do not have the technology to rectify any of these things. When we talk about rising sea level, the populations of Bangladesh are not going to be able to survive in that climate, in that country. It will just be washed out, along with many areas around the Pacific area. It is an unimaginable catastrophe. When we look at the global pandemic that we think we have tackled really rather well, we have put so much resource into that. And yet it is actually not terribly much a serious issue. It only attacks the old gits like me and gets rid of us off the planet. We're not a breeding age, so it doesn't really matter. The young people will survive it. But climate change is an existential threat to the whole of humanity. It is going to take out the young, the fit, the well, the breeding population, and our whole species survival of our species is seriously at risk. Even at 1.5 degrees, we don't know what the effects are going to be. We can only predict. On that gloomy note, I'm going to sort of finish up here. I'm not going to put any more questions, but I'm going to give each of the candidates 1 or 2 minutes to sum up the evening from their point of view, and to wind up, and then I'll close the meeting after that. So I'm going to start with Michael, to a couple of minutes. Try not to go more.
Thank you. I will keep it short. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a fascinating discussion. I've learned a lot this evening. The pandemic has shown how we as a world can start working in coordination together. The climate emergency is a similar, if not worse, crisis. We have to work together. We have to put our differences aside and tackle this as a world. Thank you.
Sandra.
I'm really heartened this evening that I'm here with 4 colleagues, and we all agree on so much, which proves that much can be done if we work together. I've been to the Arctic. I love the oceans, and at the end of the day, I know that if the oceans die, we die. Life will be extinct on this planet, and that will be down to us, no one else. So it's really good to hear that we can work together on this.
Terry.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Brenda and the team, for organising this evening. I think I would end by saying that the climate emergency is real. It's not theoretical, and it's not something that's going to happen. It is happening, and we can see it with our own eyes, and it's crucial that we act. It's crucial, I think, that Norfolk County Council leads by example. It has a huge budget and huge influence, and the councillors that you elect in Norfolk on the 6th of May will shape how that influence is going to be used. These elections are more important than ever. Can we wait another 4 years for real leadership locally on climate and the environment? I don't think that we can. In 2013, I was the candidate that was not elected to Norfolk County Council by a single vote. The UKIP candidate that beat me didn't believe in climate change, but he got 814 votes and I got 830. Every single vote counts in local elections, so please make sure that you vote, make sure everyone in your household votes, and encourage your friends and family and neighbours to vote as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And last, but by no means least, as I have said several times, Josie.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you, John, for chairing, and to Brenda and Robert and your colleagues for organising, and to my colleagues on the panel. Yeah, I agree. We have. I'm sure we've all learnt some fascinating stuff this evening. If we're lucky enough to be elected to the County Council next month, then certainly we'll be working together on these matters. The County Council could take such a lead on this and really be inspiring for organisations and for residents in Norfolk to tackle our local emissions, encourage changes of lifestyle, involving citizens in all of these decisions. So we need to bring about that change first. So we've got a mission in the next 3 weeks to bring about a change at Norfolk County Council, and then we can work on all these projects that we'd like to bring about. Thank you very much, everyone.
Well, I cannot thank you all enough for coming tonight. What I can say is there isn't a hair's breadth between you. We're all absolutely singing from the same hymn sheet, except for one thing. Whether you're elected or not, you have to continue with the mission that you have so clearly defined tonight. You have to work together, regardless of whether you're a county councillor or not, because you must continue this campaign to save us from ourselves. It is so vitally important. I'm not standing for any kind of election, but I shall continue to work for not a cause, but for humanity, our generations to come. As you might guess, I'm a grandfather. I'm very proud of my grandchildren. Luckily, they're all coming tomorrow because it's a special celebration tomorrow. My 100th birthday or something like that. It's not. But we've got to remember this all together, and we've got to do it. We are currently using the resources of 1.7 planets. It is clearly unsustainable, absolutely clearly. You've all brought it out tonight, and it is clearly unsustainable. And for the sake of our children, their progeny, and the future of humanity, we all have to do something about this crisis. So it is so important that we don't just give up because we're not in the right job at the right time in the right place. We must continue this. Now, thank you so much, Brenda, and your team and everybody else, the Backroom Boys, for actually organising tonight. It is an incredible evening and well done. Flawlessly run by Robert down in the left-hand corner of our screen. And thank you all the people who came and put such good questions. All of you, go forth, proselytise, make sure in a kindly fashion and as well and as kindly as you can that the rest of humanity becomes aware of the problem we're all facing. I don't need to say any more, except to say good night. Thank you so much for coming, and anybody is always welcome to contact me. Good night. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, John. Thank you.